Welcome back to Talk Tickers, where we we really dig into these earnings calls.
That's right.
So you don't have to. And today we're looking at Enterprise Products Partners.
EPD.
Ticker symbol EPD, if you want to follow along at home.
Yeah, always an interesting one.
And stick around to the end for our This Is Not Financial Advice segment.
Yeah.
You've got a really wild trade idea that we kind of came up with based on this deep dive.
Absolutely. But first, let's get to the actual results of the call.
Right. So it's Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. And the market is definitely buzzing about EPD's Q4 and full year results.
For good reason.
Yeah, for good reason. They pulled in $9.9 billion in EBITDA for the year.
Wow.
And smashed a bunch of their own financial and operational records.
Yeah, 12 financial records
Oh,
and
right.
16 operational records, to be exact.
So it's definitely a company that is firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely. Very strong. But what really jumped out at me was their focus on exports. It's like they've flipped a switch and they're going all in on becoming this global energy powerhouse.
So break that down for me. What does all in actually look like?
Well, they're aiming to export over 100 million barrels of hydrocarbons per month by 2027.
That's a lot.
It is. That's a massive jump from where they are now.
Yeah.
And they're already expecting solid growth this year, potentially mid-single digits in terms of cash flow.
Wow. Sounds promising, but I'm guessing there's got to be some kind of catch, right?
Oh, you know it.
There always is.
And this one comes with a 5-year-long permitting saga.
Oh, geez.
Remember that deep water crude oil export terminal they've been working on?
Vaguely?
This SPOT project?
Yeah.
Yeah. So SPOT,
Remind me why this SPOT thing is such a big deal.
it's EPD's ticket to becoming a major player in crude oil exports.
Okay.
Or at least it was supposed to be. They've poured tons of time and money into it.
Right.
But the permitting process has been a bureaucratic nightmare.
Yeah, give me the gory details. How bad could it really be?
Okay, so picture this. Over 5 years of back and forth,
Oh, my goodness.
wading through something like 80,000 comments on the project.
Seriously.
Many from NGOs.
Wow.
Jim Teague, EPD's co-CEO, even joked during the call that one commenter was worried about hawks swooping down on field mice if they mowed the grass a certain way.
You've got to be kidding me. That's micromanaging on another level.
It's a bit much.
But delays aside, this is just paperwork, right?
Yeah.
Why is this such a make or break issue for the project itself?
All that red tape scared off their anchor customer,
Oh, no.
the company that was supposed to be the main user of the terminal.
Okay.
And without that guaranteed volume, the whole project's economics get shaky.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So SPOT's on shaky ground, but EPD still wants to be a global energy player. So what's their plan B?
Well, it's not so much a plan B as a plan everything else. You know,
Oh, okay.
while they figure out what to do with SPOT, they've got a bunch of other projects coming online in 2025 to drive growth.
Okay, hit me with the highlights. What should I be watching for?
They're doubling down on their natural gas infrastructure,
I got it.
especially in the Permian Basin, like the oil and gas heartland of the U.S.
Right.
They've got 2 new gas processing plants coming online there.
Remind me, why are processing plants so important?
Think of them like refineries for natural gas.
Okay.
They take raw natural gas from the wells and separate out all the valuable stuff. Methane, ethane, propane, butane, the things people actually use for energy and manufacturing.
Got it. So more processing plants mean more capacity to handle all that gas coming out of the Permian?
Exactly. And to get that gas where it needs to go, they're also bringing the Bahia NGL pipeline into service.
Bahia.
NGL stands for natural gas liquids, by the way, like the propane and butane I mentioned earlier.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So Bahia is like a super highway for all that valuable stuff.
Yeah.
Where does it all go?
From the Permian all the way to the Gulf Coast. And once it gets there, guess what? EPD has even more infrastructure ready to handle it. They're building a new fractionation facility called Frac 14.
Frac 14. Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. Lots of infrastructure all connected.
Yeah.
But what exactly does this fractionation thing do? Sounds kind of sci-fi.
It's actually pretty straightforward. Fractionation takes those mixed NGLs and separates them out even further into their pure components. Think of it like sorting laundry. You've got your dark slides, delicates, and so on. Fractionation does the same thing for natural gas liquids.
Okay, so is all this gas staying in the U.S. or are we shipping it overseas?
That's the interesting part. A lot of it is headed for export.
Really?
EPD is building out its export capacity big time.
Wow.
The first phase of their NGL export facility on the Neches River is coming online soon, and they're also expanding their ethane and ethylene terminal at Morgan's Point.
Ethylene, that rings a bell. What was that again?
It's a key ingredient for making plastics packaging, a ton of other stuff. Global demand is huge. EPD is basically betting that the U.S. will become a major ethylene exporter, filling the gap left by shutdowns in other parts of the world.
So they're basically going all in on gas. Any plans to expand their oil business too,
Yeah.
especially with SPOT in limbo?
Well, they're facing some headwinds in their petrochemical segment,
Okay.
which is closely tied to oil. There's a global oversupply of petrochemicals right now,
Right.
which is putting pressure on prices.
But oversupply usually means bad news for producers. Is EPD worried?
Not panicking, but definitely keeping an eye on it.
Okay.
They're seeing some signs of improvement in the U.S. market, and they expect the global situation to stabilize eventually.
So ride it out and hope for the best.
Pretty much, they're also being opportunistic. Remember how I said ethylene demand is booming globally?
Yeah.
They're exploring ways to export even more of it to capitalize on that demand.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Find the bright spots and exploit them. But with all these new projects popping up, are they biting off more than they can chew financially?
That's the million-dollar question. But so far, their financials look solid, their debt levels are within their target range, and they've got plenty of cash on hand to fund these projects.
So they're not recklessly going into debt to fuel this expansion.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They're known for being pretty conservative financially, which is reassuring for investors.
Yeah.
Plus, they're committed to returning cash to shareholders through distributions and buybacks.
Music to an investor's ears, especially if those distributions keep growing.
And they just announced a 4% increase for Q4, not too shabby.
Sounds like they're striking a good balance between investing for growth and rewarding shareholders.
Huh.
But it's not just about the numbers, right? What about the people at the helm? What's EPD's management style like?
They're definitely long-term thinkers. They're not chasing short-term profits.
Okay.
They're building a sustainable business with a focus on consistent growth and value creation.
Makes sense. In an industry as volatile as energy, you need that long-term perspective. But they're not afraid to be opportunistic either, like with the whole ethylene export play.
Exactly. They're adaptable. They recognize that the energy landscape is constantly changing, and they're willing to adjust their strategy accordingly.
So they're not just sitting back and letting the world pass them by.
Definitely not. They're actively shaping their own destiny, and that proactive approach is what makes them an interesting company to watch.
All right, so we've covered a ton of ground on EPD, from their record-breaking year to their ambitious export plans, and even a few bumps in the road.
We've also explored their growth strategy, financial health, and management's long-term vision.
So before we wrap up this deep dive, let's distill it all down to the key takeaways.
Correct.
What should you, the listener, be walking away with?
The big picture is this EPD is in a strong position. They've got a diversified business model, a massive infrastructure network, and a solid track record of financial performance.
They're also making some pretty savvy moves to capitalize on the growing global demand for U.S. energy, especially in the natural gas and NGL space.
However, they're not without their challenges.
Right.
The petrochemical segment is facing headwinds, and the future of the SBOT project remains uncertain.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they navigate those challenges, but they've shown that they're adaptable and willing to adjust their strategy as needed.
Exactly. And their commitment to returning value to shareholders through distributions and buybacks is a definite plus.
All this leads to a very important question. Will they go for a big, bold move to supercharge their export strategy? Specifically, will they pull the trigger on a major acquisition?
It's definitely a possibility, and that brings us to our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, where we let our imaginations run wild.
Remember, folks, this is pure speculation for entertainment purposes only.
Yes.
We are not investment advisors.
Repeat after me. This is not financial advice.
Okay, so we know EPD is keen on becoming a major exporter, but the SBOT project is stuck in permitting purgatory. What if they said, forget the slow boat, we're buying a speedboat?
You mean?
Exactly. What if they acquired an existing port facility, just skip the whole permitting nightmare and get right to exporting?
That would certainly be a bold move and potentially a risky one.
Oh, absolutely. We'd be talking about a massive investment, potentially billions of dollars, and there would still be regulatory hurdles to jump through, even with an existing facility.
Not to mention the potential for fierce competition from other companies vying for a slice of that export pie.
But hey, high risk, high reward, right? It would certainly shake things up in the energy world.
It would definitely be a game changer, and while it's purely hypothetical, it highlights EPD's ambition and their willingness to think outside the box.
All right, folks, there you have it, our deep dive into enterprise products partners. We've explored the good, the bad, and the potentially game-changing.
Remember, this is just the starting point for your own research. Do your due diligence and decide for yourself if EPD is a company you want to bet on.
Until next time, happy investing.